Apologies for the slight delay in starting this program. The fault is all mine. Today at 9 o'clock, this is the third leg of our triple header, and I am joined by Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, retired, and he and I are going to have a discussion more about him saying what he thinks is happening in India in terms of being self-reliant in its arms, ammunition, artillery, and what have you. And this is something that has not been covered before. It's been touched upon in our earlier conversations. So let us sit back and listen to what the good general has to say. General Ravi Shankar, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel, sir.
Namaskar, and thanks a lot for calling me once again on your platform. A very good evening to all the viewers, and let's start, please.
So, General Ravi Shankar, you have worked many years very closely to try and bring about as much self-sourcing or Atmanirbharta in India's requirements for its armed forces, whether it is artillery or arms, ammunition. I'm not going to go into the details as much as I would like you to kind of walk our viewers through. Just think about, there is a conflict, and then suddenly, everything is becoming difficult to get hold of. Because in a war that happens, and already now, because of an existing war, this could be even worse. So if something like that were to happen, how would India approach this whole thing? What kind of buffers would India keep, and so on and so forth? So take it away, sir.
Oh, thanks a lot. First and foremost, let me put across one issue. It's one thing to be Atmanirbhar, and the other thing to be ready for a eventuality, right? India has generally been ready for any eventuality or any conflict always. Whether it's been Atmanirbhar or not is a different affair. So let's keep that out separately. Okay. Whether it was in 71 or we are talking of 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙦 or we are talking of Eastern Ladakh, we were always prepared. We have a base level of preparation for any eventuality. If we had time, like we had in 1971, then you built up to a particular desired level before you went into an offensive. So, right, but that was largely achieved not through the Atmanirbharta route, some through the Atmanirbharta route, but largely with a lot of imports. So, preparation for an eventuality at every point of time we've been pretty high. The last problem we've had was in Eastern Ladakh, and in Eastern Ladakh we were able to face China confidently, right? Because we were prepared for battle. We were prepared to undertake battle. And probably at that point, I don't think China was prepared. I mean, I'm very sure that they were not prepared. Yeah, 3-4 years down the line, they would probably be better prepared, and so would we be. So that's a different story altogether. Now let's look at Atmanirbharta. Atmanirbharta is self-reliance. Are you self-reliant for all your warlike stores for defense, in defense? When you say warlike stores, you're looking at fighter aircraft, you're looking at transport aircraft, you're looking at helicopters, you're looking at warships, you're looking at submarines, you're looking at aircraft carriers. Then you're looking at tanks, you're looking at guns, you're looking at missiles, you're looking at infantry weapons. So the main warlike thing, are you Atmanirbhar or not? That's the larger question. Right. Before I get into that and walk you through that, let me put it across this one thing. No nation is 100% Atmanirbhar to design, develop, and produce all these weapon systems. Anyone. To give you an example, if there is aircraft, now not all aircraft use all weapons from that particular country in which this aircraft is made. They'll use items from all over. So to that extent, there's a trade going on. There are certain, for example, 𝙒𝙗𝙗 of France is good at inertial navigation systems. It's the go-to place for any kind of inertial navigation. So it's a key technology holder. So when you say Atmanirbhar, you don't have to be 100% self-reliant, but you should own key technologies with which you can trade. You should have the capability to be a original equipment manufacturer, right? To be a big scale integrator, and you should have the scale to produce weapons and ammunition uh, as to what the country needs, right? Right. Now, is India? The first question I'll answer in a short way, and then I'll give a background to it. Is India Atmanirbhar? That's the first question which everyone will ask. Now, you have to look at it at two levels. The first level is the strategic level. Strategically, India has a tremendous indigenous missile program which has come through sanctions. No one has given us anything, so it's all indigenous. We have everything. Second, you have all space related technologies, right? And third, atomic energy. Everything is ours. All these three you have developed without outside assistance. In fact, in a technology denial regime. So you are Atmanirbhar there completely. Okay, including key technologies. Remember, India launches its own satellites and gives satellites for others, and we are building another satellite launching station down south in Tamil Nadu. Now, when you look at the operational aspect of Atmanirbharta, self-reliance, you have shipbuilding capability, you have developed submarine building capability, you are building your own aircraft carrier at this point of time. Our artillery is completely Atmanirbhar, or say 90%, right? Air defense is largely Atmanirbhar. We have started building our own aircraft in the form of Tejas. We have been building our helicopters, right? And we've got now the AK-47, AK-203 rifle factory and all that. And we have a lot of integration and production capacity. So to a large extent, we are moving towards Atmanirbharta. We are not Atmanirbhar. Let's be very frank, right? That is why, and why we are not Atmanirbhar is a long story. Because the governments before didn't want it. There's military bureaucracy involved. The DRDO developed in a different, vertical. The production agencies like the OFB and the DPSUs, were given preferential treatment. The private industry was not co-opted. A lot of problems, and we had a bureaucratic approach. The government itself was not very clear. We never would export. We had our own morality issues, and it was not real politic. I mean, we could look at it in many ways. The defense was considered a holy cow. I mean, we had the holy cow plus white elephant approach, right? And that's probably part of the non-aligned thinking and all that. And it takes time to come out of that. The reforms started in 1990, economic reforms. Today, we've started the defense reforms in real earnest. Let me be very frank, in the past 1 decade or so. So we're going to take time. And we must understand any reform is a decadal cycle, minimum. That means it will take 10 years. In my experience, if you have to buy a pen to an aircraft, it doesn't matter which. If you have to go through that cycle of acquisition, it takes 10 years. A cycle of design and development takes 10 years. When I say 10 years, it's a mean. It could be 5 years, it could be 15 years. At times, it could go to 25, 30 years also. Right? And then, of course, we have to understand that really Atmanirbharta started with once our industrial base started expanding, which was missing earlier, right? And our economy started blooming. That's when people said, look, why can't we be self-sufficient in defense? And also the fact that India was seen to be rising as a power. And all this started in 1990 with the economic reforms. And we've reached here. Yeah, if you compare India with China, we've been slow. And China has gone very fast. But what goes up fast comes down fast also. What goes up slow has the ability to sustain itself. Right. In terms of capability of, say, let me connect this Atmanirbharta with what I said earlier, defense preparedness. If you look at it, India is capable to defend itself. it has never been found short of defending itself, whether it was in 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪 during against Pakistan or in Eastern Ladakh. I mean, let me put it in perspective. Uh, Look at the Russian offensive into Ukraine. They had a plan, and that plan misfired in the first 48 hours. Then they had to build up on ground. And we saw a 64-kilometer long convoy hung around Kyiv, north of Kyiv, for over 1 week. And they couldn't move. They had logistics problems and all that. And in it, how much was the distance? 200-300 kilometers. That's all. Take your mind back to Eastern Ladakh. 2020, when the Chinese aggression took place and the assertion and Galwan took place and all that, in that period of 1 month, just 1 month, okay, we could build up 2 divisions, almost the entire strength what Russia is using for offensive into Ukraine. We built it up over 2,000 kilometers when roads were still not open into high altitudes, okay, on marginal roads. When I say marginal roads, one-way snowbound roads and tracks, and got ready, and we were able to mirror PLA deployment. It was a humongous task of operational and logistics capability, okay, and the PLA was taken aback, and after that nothing happened. And of course, later we turned tables on them, and the Kailash Range is a different story. So that capability we've always had. We've had this tremendous operational capability. And that is respected throughout the world. And in UN, Indian troops and contingents are the most sought after. So if you say capability to defend India, we have. But if you ask me, does India have the capability to project itself as a regional power and take up the responsibilities which it is going to assume in days to come as one of the big powers? And that transition is happening as I speak, with the Russian defense minister here. Yesterday, the British defense minister secretary was here, and the deputy of USA was here. Within the past week, the PM of Japan was here, and we had a virtual talk between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Scott Morrison. A lot of action, right? And today, of all things, Mr. Lavrov has said India is the best person to mediate between Ukraine and Russia. It is, what is it? Power. It's the capability of India to rise as a power. It is this thing. Yeah, do we have that capability to are the defense forces modern and Atmanirbhar to do that? Not yet. Are we in the loop to do it? Yes. Will we be able to do it? I'm very confident. I'm very confident because I was quite involved in indigenizing artillery. I did mention, and we could turn around a Russian-based artillery which was existed with us till the end of the last century. Now, 20 years later, it is neither Russian nor US nor Israeli nor this thing. It is Indian. We've taken help from all of them, but today we are no more dependent on them. We make our own ammunition, we make our own guns, we make our own rockets, we make our own missiles. Right? So I think this is what I've had to say about Atmanirbharta. We are not there. There's a clear road ahead. Our exports have started, defense exports. Our industrial base has started widening. There's a clear-headed policy on the part of the government to go the Indian route, right? The Indian route doesn't mean that the foreigners are shut off. If a foreigner wants to come and set up a factory here and capability, he's welcome. Like the Maruti Suzuki model. After all, Maruti Suzuki, when it started with that Maruti 800, came with just a small plant. And today it's a burgeoning plant, and it is one of the biggest exporters from Suzuki itself, the Gurgaon plant. So, and they can't get away from here. They're as Indian as Japanese they are, right? So use that model, we will be Atmanirbhar, right? So this is what I've had to say about Atmanirbhar. Any questions you have or the audience has, I'm okay.
Yeah, the audience has a few questions, General, but first let me ask you one question from myself. Now, if you look at the modern weaponry, it's got a lot of electronics in it. Now, the one thing that India does not have, I mean, even the US doesn't have, but US manages to get what it needs or what it wants from Taiwan. I don't know whether India is, I'm talking about chips. See, what happens is when you talk about designing chips for armed forces, you want to have a certain X factor so that even if the missile were to fall in enemy's hands, let's say it was not exploded, they should not be able to figure out what it is that you've got inside, that secret sauce. So there's a fair amount of encryption, a fair amount of opaqueness, that obfuscation that gets built into it. India has never had a chip plant of its own. Even the lowest micron density thing, the semiconductor complex got burnt down in the 80s last century. I don't think India has ever recovered from that and started doing afresh. How much of an impact do you think that would be?
To be very honest, not much of an impact, right? But
And why is that?
why is that? Because the level of electronics which have been put in the weapon system so far have not needed so many electronics. Going ahead, you need more electronics. There's no doubt. Uh, right? I mean, on that we shouldn't have a doubt. Are we behind the loop at this point of time? Yes. Are we catching up? There is an endeavor. The government is investing in making semiconductor plants. There's a startup in IIT Madras which has started making military grade processors, own processors. That means you don't have to depend on an Intel processor. So all our military equipment will have Indian processors. And if they have Indian semiconductors with Indian software, they're cyber proof, right? And so we are getting there. To be honest, we are not there as it. And also, to be balanced, we have not needed it so far. So far. Okay. And the third aspect is, this is my personal experience. Many of these electronic systems tend to fail in war in actual conditions. I mean, this is my experience. So there is also think how electronic should the battlefield be. Okay, because missiles, once you put electronics in it, it's good. All these function immediately, but once a missile is stored for 5-10 years, it starts aging. Will it still function? Is a huge question mark. And the experience of the Gulf wars, 1, 2, Kosovo conflict, and other wars, and our own this thing suggests that as missiles and electronics and weapon electronics, I wouldn't say missiles alone, weapon electronics uh, remain unused and start aging, they deteriorate. And then they're a dud. So there is a big question whether you need so much electronics in a system. At the end of the day, you need the system to function in battle and not be a dud.
Thank you very much, General Ravi Shankar. And let's take some questions for the good general now.
Yeah.
My guy is, let me see. I have a few questions coming up
Yeah,
there.
please.
I'm just trying to see.
Yeah, you can read them out.
Yeah. Let me just give me. Sometimes what happens is power goes off. You never know.
Yeah, I understand. It's okay.
Yeah. So the first question is from Bhujanga MV. Can foreign exchange rate protection, here you go. Can foreign
Yeah.
exchange rate protection clause in defense contract be removed at all?
Well, exchange variation rates have been a bone of contention, uh, right? Especially for indigenous defense manufacturers and also for those of import. Now, with imports reducing, we are not going to be hit so much by the exchange rate variations, right? But there is an issue for indigenous defense manufacturers. There are mechanisms being built around this. Unless we get more Atmanirbhar, this problem will not get resolved. The problem is there. We have some solutions. They're not the best solutions, but these are things. Look, exchange rate variation is a fact of life. You can't run away from it.
And here we go. The next question is
Yeah.
from Sankadip Bhattacharya.
Yeah.
Given the long delay of Indian indigenous high caliber production capability, isn't it necessary for India to buy more better aircraft? Why this continuous delay in procurement?
Well, at this point of time, let me take it from here. You have to understand that the Rafale acquisition actually started 20 years back. It started for more than about 130 odd I don't remember the exact figure. It's 104 plus 36, yeah, some more 130 odd aircraft.
Right.
It started as the MMRCA deal, right? And that process started at the turn of the century and concluded 20 years later, just buying 36 aircraft. Okay, now if you start the process, you're looking at minimum 10 to 15 years before the next deal comes through. Because, like I said, it's a decadal process. The question is it better to buy aircraft for the next in 15 years, 10 to 15 years, or is it better to develop your own aircraft and increase your production capability? If you want to be Atmanirbhar, you might as well take that time and do it. You're in a situation, you cannot run out of it. Okay. Now, are the existing fleet enough? Obviously, they're enough because someone has taken a conscious decision to go the Atmanirbhar route. Okay. And the ramping up of the production capability is always geometric by nature. The first one takes 1 year, the next 5 take 1 more year, the next 20 takes 1 year. So that will happen. They will come up to scale. I feel at this point of time, India is at a stage where it is better to go through the vagaries and cycle and the difficulties and the headwinds of Atmanirbharta than go back to procurement from abroad.
Next question from Abhishek Singh.
Yeah.
Whom can India buy nuclear submarines from in addition to India building its own and the Indo-French nuclear submarine deal?
Look, I am very clear that we should make our own. There's no question of making. You have all nuclear technology. You have the ability to make your own submarines. If we have the heft, even if it's an Indo-nuclear submarine deal, everything has to be built in India on a joint venture basis. And that's what strategic partnership programs are all about, right? There's no question of going abroad. That's the way I look at it. And we have had enough experience of operating nuclear submarines. We even have Russia still available with us. Today's geostrategic construct might fade in the next 1-2 years, and the nuclear submarine deal is a long-term issue. So we have to take a conscious decision on that.
Next question from Neeraj Kulkarni. Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, sir. Does AFMC related needs, telesurgery, bleeding prevention kit, etc., to come under defense production? Is there any Defense Department portal for startups?
Yeah, there is. All these are part of this thing. And there's no portal for startups. It's part of the normal defense procurement. They also go through the same capital route, right? Only thing is they handle it differently. But the thing in this is that a lot of this is hooked on to our civil defense civil medical capability. Okay. The AFMC has latched on to them. So whatever is available in our own country is just taken and used. So if indigenization takes place in our civil medical setup, that will transfer itself onto AFMC. AFMC doesn't have the capability of its own research. Okay. That is what India has to concentrate on. I think health is an important aspect of Atmanirbharta in the larger sense. Strategic autonomy. You have great doctors. You have a fantastic vaccination program, right? You have the capability to make your own vaccines. You are one of the biggest vaccine producer. You are a pharma giant, right? Your healthcare industry is actually a booming industry, right? You could get a lot of medical tourism, so-called medical tourism. So why not? Why shouldn't India get into medical technologies as part of national research? Uh, AFMC and medical requirements are just a minuscule requirement as to in comparison to the overall thing, and I think there's a way forward. I take the point that about this. There are startups which do certain things which are meant only for defense purposes. They are being encouraged.
Next question, please. Neeraj Kulkarni again. Sir, can you suggest best sources to contact for AFMC medical defense related startup ideas?
Yeah, just contact the AFMC, the DG AFMS office in Delhi. We have to go through them only. There's no other route.
Mandar Karnik wants to know, why is India lagging in tank technology? We have figured out artillery but not tanks.
That's a great question. It's not that we have not figured out tank technology. We've built tanks. We've also have a beautiful production line. We've operated tanks. I suppose it's the chemistry of the people involved. Uh, right? I will not say more than that. But having said that, there is a move afoot to now build a tank for the high altitude, right? And I think the RFP is also out, in which uh, they are adopting the artillery model. In fact, what they're trying to do, I know the DRDO and the L&T, what they're trying to do is the K9 Vajra is now a proven platform for high altitude, right? The chassis. It's gone through high altitude trials also. So you have a high altitude chassis. So you take out that gun and put a tank gun on top and mate it and have a hybrid system. That's the fastest route that's being attempted. There's another route also being attempted, but well, that I would not like to put it across here. But this is attempted. So I think, and this is going to come through in a faster time scale because the chassis is proven and chassis is ready. Everything is ready. It's only the turret and the gun, and of course the firefighting system, not fire, the fire control system and all that, for which we have the complete technology. So having gone through the initial cycle with the Arjun, I think the second cycle will come faster and be more successful. And I don't see why our armored corps should not get tanks the way gunners have got it.
General Ravi Shankar, just terminology. Can you expand AFMC for us, sir?
Armed Forces, AFMC is Armed Forces Medical College, but what he was asking is about Armed Forces Medical Services.
Okay. And viewers, RFQ typically means request for quotes, and RFP means request for parts. So essentially,
right. RFP is request for proposal. It's a tender.
Proposal also. Okay.
RFI is a request for information. Okay, that's you put out a RFI first and find out what is there in the market. Then you go put it. You make a plan based on what is available in the market, so that you don't ask for something which you don't have. Then you ask for something based on the RFP, which is a request for proposal, which is a tender.
Well, as luck would have it, General Ravi Shankar, my next book, it's almost done, is about nuclear submarines, and it's a spy thriller. I've taken a step back from political thrillers to spy thriller, and I will share the book with you, sir. You can tell me, look, you don't have this thing figured out right, because I didn't try to go too far inside. At the same time, I want to keep a general picture of what a nuclear submarine does, and so on and so forth.
That's great.
Next question, please. Raja Mukherjee wants to know, army recruitments are on hold for 2 years. Do you think, given that...
I didn't know. I don't think it's on hold. No, I don't think so. I mean, you'll have to check your where you got this from.
Yeah, so Raja, you may want to double check. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think so.
Next question from Varun Rao. What
Uh,
lessons for India with Ukraine seemingly so successful against Russian aircraft?
well, I don't think Ukraine has been so successful against Russian aircraft. That's what the Western commentary says. Um, but the evidence doesn't suggest that they have shot down too many aircraft. So, I mean, since your fundamental premise is wrong, the evidence that Russia has lost so many aircraft is only based on newspaper reporting or media reporting. There's no evidence, right? And there is also no evidence that Ukraine has had any air activity. So there's no lesson for me to draw from this. I've got a lot of lessons, and I put out articles on lessons from the Ukraine war in 3 editions. Please go to my blog gunashot.com. I've put out an article on early lessons, later day lessons, military lessons, and now I'm going to consolidate everything and publish it again. But this is not a this is a premise, right? I'll not go by that.
AK wants to know, sir, what are the areas where we need to increase our capabilities to meet all kinds of Chinese threats?
Yeah, that's a fair question, and I think we need to lay a lot of emphasis on our information and surveillance systems, ground-based information surveillance, aerial, space-based, human-based. Right? Uh, we need to do a lot more. We are not up there. Uh, Besides this, we need to develop long-range vectors. We need to strengthen our aerial capabilities. We need to strengthen our logistic systems. We need to build infrastructure. A lot of infrastructure needs to be built. And like I said, we need tanks designed for high altitudes, which is on in the offing. Now, firepower, we are there. We just need the numbers. We need a lot of bridging systems, okay, for the high altitudes to give you mobility, which is also being looked at. It's not that we don't have, because we have enough, but I think we need to go to the next level, right? And of course, like I said, infrastructure, which I've already said. One thing which I think which we need to do, and which there is some movement on that, is energy. Battlefield will of tomorrow in high altitudes demand a lot of energy. So you need to look at renewables, you need to look at fuel cells and such things, because the fossil fuel based energy, which is humped all the way from the plains to high altitudes, is not only costly, it is environmentally poor, and it is tedious. So we have to lighten our logistics load uh, by a huge factor if we can go in for innovative energy systems in high altitudes, right? Habitat is something which we need to improve. Uh, we have innovative solutions, but we need to do it better, because the numbers have increased, and it is almost a permanent solution unless the Chinese come around, which I don't think they seem to be coming around.
One last question from me, General
Yeah.
Ravi Shankar, before we sign off today. In 1962 war, China withdrew on its own. That's what is being believed. What, according to you, was the trigger point for China to withdraw?
Look, I think the Chinese surprised themselves by coming over the Himalayan crest. They had probably not planned for it. And you must remember, at that point of time, China was not in a strong shape internally. Also, they were going through the Great Famine, right? Uh, and it was the worst economic time. It was not the great leap forward. It was a great leap backwards at that time, right? And here, this army was stretched across the Himalayas. Probably they realized overall, geopolitically and internal politically, that they couldn't afford to have so many people across the Himalayas, and they were not ready to be there. And probably they didn't have the insight of uh, being able to retain all these lands or the territory which they had captured, and they had to let go. They were not prepared for it. We also have to remember that China was not that modernist state at that point of time. It is just that they were better prepared than our army, politically better prepared, and that they could inflict the defeat on us. So that's why they couldn't hold on. And if they'd held
So,
on, it would have been a catastrophe for them.
well, an alternative narrative that is not much discussed in India is that around the same time, the first set of aircraft landed from US after Nehru's request. They were
I
called
don't
Caribou.
think, let me be very clear about it. I don't think that made a difference at all. By then, the whole story was over. And for some strange reason, the Indian government was not prepared to use Air Force at all. So it
Yeah,
didn't
that's
matter
right.
what we
That's right.
had. In
Yeah.
fact, it was one of our blunders that we didn't use Air Force. If we had used Air Force, we wouldn't have suffered this disease, right? But then that's a different era, and I don't think we should go back and revisit it, except to draw our own lessons, not to do that in the future.
See, why I brought it up, General Ravi Shankar, is that there's a perception that US never came to India's help. That's not true. In 62, they did.
Look, again, let me be very clear. The US came to our help when it needed to suit its purposes, right? We are very clear about it. Our relationship with US today is strategic in nature. If you go back into history, you could keep discussing it this way and that way. The way I look at it, this relationship has to be driven forward. If you look at this relationship through the rear view mirror, you can't drive forward, right? And
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that one. Yes, yes.
right, you have to look at it from where we are and take it forward. And I think uh, the current situation is put both the countries in a situation where we have to realize each other's capabilities and culpabilities and limitations. I'm using this word very carefully. Capabilities, culpabilities, and limitations. And we have to understand that we have to live with each other. Right? And gone are the days that that US could dictate to everyone to do what it wanted.
That's true.
Okay. Even when US was a great power, right, and India was relatively not a power at all, we weathered sanctions. We know sanctions. If US does the sanctions route, then they're going on the wrong path. Let me be upfront and blunt about it. Right? We have a common problem, a common adversary, a common competitor called in China. How do we handle this both together is in common interests. We shouldn't differentiate those interests. We shouldn't put a price on each other to say, look, I'll help you, provided you do this. There's no provided in this relationship. We have to each, right? It is like, it's very nice to have a honeymoon. Beyond the honeymoon, there's a marriage, and that marriage has to be made successful and not end in a divorce.
Yes, indeed. Well put, General Ravi Shankar. And as always, a pleasure to talk to you, General Ravi Shankar. I know I sometimes give you questions from left field, off googlies,
That's okay.
but you seem to be able to handle them just as well as anything else. So thank you very much, sir.
No.
And viewers, do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to click on the bell button. Fully 1 in 2 of you are still not subscribed to our channel. Would love to see that number go up. Thank you very much, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you, and thanks a lot, and namaskar.